It made contact with somebody from the Democratic National Committee's office, and they've been served. Democracy has prevailed today.
But in a bizarre twist of events, on August 2nd, less than 1 month after serving the subpoena, Lucas was reported dead. Police are not releasing the cause of death at this time and are not commenting on speculation that Lucas was murdered. His unusual and sudden death is fueling speculation about the recent death of Seth Conrad Rich. Rich, a DNC employee, was working on several committee cases involving voter and election fraud before he was murdered by gunshots. He was also set to testify in the FBI's email investigation of Hillary Clinton before he was killed. Authorities have ruled his death as a robbery gone wrong, but police records indicate nothing was stolen from Rich. His recent mysterious deaths appear to be something stranger than fiction.
Rich's murder made national news because of his job with the Democratic National Committee as the director of voter expansion data.
That was just a robbery, I believe, wasn't it?
No, there's no finding. So
what are you suggesting? What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting that our sources take risks, and they become concerned to see things occurring like that.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean,
our sources face serious risks.
But it's quite something to suggest a murder. That's basically what you're doing.
We are investigating to understand what happened in that situation with Seth Rich.
But was he one of your sources then? I mean...
The Seth Rich case has just exploded back into the headlines with Julian Assange's assertion that Seth Rich was the WikiLeaks responsible for bringing down the DNC chair and exposing the rigged Democratic primary. Not only that, but we now know that Seth Rich wasn't just a staff member at the DNC as was widely reported. He was the director of voter expansion data, which means he had the electronic keys to the entire Democratic organization. As for the motives of his leak, it would seem that Seth Rich was a Bernie Sanders supporter who felt betrayed by the primary rigging, and so he leaked what he could to show that Hillary had stolen the nomination. This picture shows Seth Rich at the scene of the crime only a few blocks away from a trauma center. They had the time to string crime tape around his body, but they didn't have the time to travel 3 blocks to the emergency room to save his life.
The staffer's name is Seth Rich, and they did a forensic exam of his computer within 96 hours after his murder. Said Rich had made contact with WikiLeaks through a guy named Gavin McFadden, who is now room temperature. He passed away from cancer, but he was an American investigative reporter. Seth Rich ostensibly used him as the cutout or the go-between to get these 44,000 emails to WikiLeaks. The subject of the emails, apparently the story is that Seth Rich was outraged that DNC was rigging the primary for Hillary Clinton. Now, the local Washington police said, no, nothing to any of that. This is just a robbery gone bad. The problem with that is that his wallet was not stolen, nor his phone. So people, and the investigation stalled after that. No perp has been found. Robbery gone bad. Seth Rich died. So the family of Seth Rich went out there and hired their own investigator, a guy by the name of Rod Wheeler. He's a former detective in the Washington Police Department. He said, my investigation up to this point shows that there was some degree of email exchange between Seth Rich and WikiLeaks.
Let's go through this case. The timeline is fascinating here. As I played in the last segment, Julian Assange, I asked him repeatedly on radio and television if Russia was involved. Absolutely not. Now, believe him or not, he's a guy that WikiLeaks has an 11-year history of never being proven wrong. And all these leaks, by the way, ended up being, a lot of them ended up being published in places like the New York Times. So I guess my question is, when you look at the timeline of this, and 12 days after he was killed, it shows up on WikiLeaks, what did you discover in terms of the contacts with WikiLeaks?
Right. Well, that's an excellent question. And let me clear that up right now, exactly what it was that I found. Now, I have never seen the emails myself directly. I haven't even seen the computer that Seth Rich used. Here's the problem with all of this. I don't even know where the computer is. I checked with the police department. They said they don't know where the computer is, and the FBI. They say they don't have the computer. Now, where did this information come from in terms of knowing or believing, I should say, that Seth Rich could have been in communications with WikiLeaks? There was a federal investigator that was involved on the inside of the case, a person that's very credible. And I'll tell you, let me just say this, Sean, I don't like to suggest things without saying the person's name, but I can't say the person's name because that person would be thrown under the bus, and I can't do that. But this person, we checked him out. We have to check him out. Very credible. He said he laid eyes on the computer and he laid eyes on the case file. And he came across very credible. When you look at that with the totality of everything else that I found in this case, it's very consistent for a person with my experience to begin to think, well, perhaps there were some email communications between Seth and WikiLeaks. Every time I talk with the police department, though, Sean, every time I talk to the police department about the WikiLeaks or the emails, it's automatically shut down. That discussion is automatically shut down.
Well, so we don't know for sure if the FBI or if the D.C. police have any access to these forensics, these emails?
Right. We don't know. We actually have a statement from the FBI telling us to contact the D.C. police. The D.C. police says contact the FBI. Now, which is it? If this is just a murder investigation, first of all, why would the FBI be involved? The only reason the FBI would be involved, just so that the viewers understand, is if this has some degree of national exposure, meaning because maybe it is related to the DNC, and we don't know that. We don't know that for sure. It could have been a botched robbery. But my point is this, Sean, and I've been investigating murders for a while. You have to look at every possibility. You can't just look at one thing and say, well, that has to be it.
Have you ever seen a lot of robberies, which is how they've been looking into this case, where the person has their wallet and their watch after they've been shot and killed in the back?
No, I haven't. Now, that's not to say that that could not happen. But here's the thing, and this is so important. There's been a $125,000 reward out for information pertaining to the death of Seth Rich. Not one person has come forward. Here's one other thing that's going to be startling, and I'm just going to say this right now. I reached out to the police department way back in March when the family first hired me, right, to get involved. I didn't hear anything from the police department for 2 to 3 days. Guess what I learned yesterday from the family of Seth Rich? The police department did not call me back because someone, a high-ranking official at the DNC, check this out, a high-ranking official at the DNC, when I called the police department, they got that information and called the Rich family wanting to know why was I snooping around.
Wouldn't that explain how is it possible that the DNC, when the FBI wanted to look at their computers, was able to bring in their own people? Or that the people that ended up getting immunity ended up being able to destroy their laptop computers? Is there any evidence that he might have been disgruntled at the treatment of Bernie Sanders and the unfairness, and that the fix was in to put Hillary in that position, and maybe had evidence of that?
No, I haven't seen any evidence in that regard. The only thing that I have been able to confirm is that there were some problems that Seth was having on his job at the DNC right before he was killed. And the person, listen to this, the person that called the father after I called the police to get information, that's the person that Seth was having problems with at the DNC. So, you know, connect the dots here. It's starting to all come together.
So, if you accept all of this at face value, what you would conclude here is that the FBI, and thus Comey, knew about this connection of this Democrat National Committee staffer had been murdered, and his forwarding of 44,000 emails to WikiLeaks, and despite knowing all of that, still pushed the Russian story.